want you to imagine finding out exactly how much your family loves you, and having the number turn out to be smaller than you ever let yourself believe. That's not a metaphor. That's exactly what happened to me, and it happened in 11 days I will never get back. My name is Naomi Castellano. I'm 34. And for 12 years, I ran a boutique branding agency that I started at my kitchen table with a laptop, a credit card, and absolutely no safety net. There were years I worked until 2 a.m. and then got up at 6 to do it again. While the people I grew up with were posting vacation photos from Tulum, I was eating cold noodles at my desk, plowing every spare dollar back into the company. I hired my first full-time employee when I was 27. By 30, I had an actual office with my name on the lease. By 33, I had a staff of 14, and a client list that made competitors nervous. So when a national marketing conglomerate offered to buy me out entirely, $11.2 million, I didn't scream. I didn't jump up and down. I sat in my car in the parking garage and cried for 20 minutes straight, because for the first time, 12 years of exhaustion had a number attached to it, and the number finally made sense of all of it. My husband, Julian, was the first person I called. That night, we sat across from each other at our dining table, and I watched him read the offer letter twice, completely silent. When he finally looked up, he said, "This changes everything." And I thought how foolishly, it turns out, that he meant it changed everything for us. Our future. Our family. I had no idea what he actually meant. The deal closed on a Wednesday. By Friday night, we were on our patio with 2 glasses of wine, and that's when Julian said something so calmly it almost didn't register as a request. He said, "I want you to tell your mother and your brother that the agency went under. That we're drowning in debt, and we might lose the house." I just looked at him. He didn't back down. He kept going. "Tell them we need to figure things out privately for a while. And then let's watch who actually shows up." Part of me wanted to argue with him right there on the spot. But another part of me, the part that had quietly wired my mother rent money more times than I could count, the part that had paid for my brother Dominic's entire honeymoon without so much as a thank you card, the part that had noticed how differently my father spoke to me depending on whether business was good that quarter, that part went completely silent. Because underneath the shock of what Julian was suggesting was a question I'd spent years avoiding. Did they love me, or did they love what I could give them? I agreed to the lie. I called my mother first, and I let my voice shake, which honestly wasn't hard, because my hands were already trembling. I told her the agency had been bleeding money for months, that we were behind on everything, that Julian and I were probably going to have to sell the house. There was a long pause on the other end. Then she said, "Oh, that's unfortunate, honey. I actually have to run, I'll call you back." She did not call me back that night. The next morning, I called my younger brother Dominic, the one whose wedding I'd helped bankroll without blinking, whose honeymoon flights I'd quietly upgraded to first class as a surprise. I told him the same story. He was quiet for a second, and then he said, "Naomi, my wife's baby shower is in 5 weeks. I really can't deal with drama right now." I told him I understood. He said he'd check in later. He never did. And then, within 11 days, 2 things happened that rearranged something permanent inside me. First, my mother put my childhood bedroom, the room where my old sketchbooks were still stacked in the closet, up on a short-term rental site. She didn't ask. She didn't warn me. She just listed it, said a nightly price, and opened the door to strangers. When I saw the listing pop up on my own phone, I had to sit down on my kitchen floor, because my legs stopped cooperating. Then Dominic uninvited us from the baby shower. Not a phone call. A text message. 6 words, "It's probably better if you don't come." Julian found me on that kitchen floor, phone still in my hand, not saying anything at all. He didn't gloat. He didn't say he'd predicted it. He just sat down next to me, took my hand, and said quietly, "Now show them the transfer." I didn't fully understand what he meant until he opened his laptop right there on the floor and pulled up our joint account. $11.2 million, cleared, sitting there like a fact that had been patiently waiting for its moment. He said, "You don't explain. You don't defend yourself. You don't beg anyone to feel guilty. You just show them the number, and let them sit with the choice they already made." I took a screenshot but didn't send it that night. I wanted a full day to make sure I was acting from clarity, not from the raw sting of 11 days that had just stripped away every excuse I'd ever made for my family. Because here's the thing I finally understood: when your mother lists your childhood bedroom to strangers less than 2 weeks after hearing you're broke, that's not a snap decision. That's a character trait that was always sitting there, just waiting for the right circumstances to surface. I sent the screenshot to my mother on a Tuesday morning. No message, no caption. Just the picture. Her reply came almost 4 hours later, a flood of exclamation points. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" As if I were the one who had deceived her. As if she hadn't listed my childhood bedroom for $90 a night before my fake bankruptcy had even had time to sink in. She said she'd take the listing down right away. She said she hoped I understood she was only being practical. She used that word 3 separate times. I counted. Dominic called that same evening, and his voice had a completely different tone than the 6 words he'd sent me. Warm. Almost cheerful. Talking about how he'd always known I'd bounce back, how he'd just been telling his wife what a strong person I was. He brought up the baby shower twice. He never once mentioned uninviting me, like those 6 words had simply never existed, like I'd hallucinated a text message with a timestamp still sitting in our thread. I let him talk, and when he finally stopped, I said, gently, "I love you, but I need some space from the people who disappeared during those 11 days. He got quiet. Then he said, "That's really not fair." I said I knew it probably felt that way. And I hung up. My father reached out about a week after that, and out of everyone, he was the most honest. He said he didn't know how to handle other people's struggles, that money had always terrified him in ways he'd never dealt with, that he was sorry he'd gone quiet instead of calling. It wasn't a flawless apology. But it was real, and I could tell. I told him I heard him, that I needed time, but that I wasn't shutting the door for good. That conversation sits differently in my chest than the other 2. Not every relationship in my family turned out to be the same story. I just finally stopped pretending they were all equal. Julian and I bought a smaller house that summer, well under what we could technically afford, because we wanted somewhere that felt like a home instead of a stage. We put in a garden. I'd never had time for anything like that while I was building the agency. I grow zucchini now, badly, but there's something about kneeling in dirt and waiting for something honest to grow that felt like exactly the medicine I needed. So here's what I want to leave you with, because I have a feeling some of you watching this have your own version of my 11 days. You have people in your life whose love comes with conditions you've spent years refusing to look at directly. I'm not telling you to burn every bridge. I'm not telling you that money turns people into monsters. What I'm telling you is that the money existed before I ever showed anyone the number. It was already sitting there. What changed in those 11 days is that the people around me were simply handed a reason to become exactly who they already were. And they did. It hurt more than almost anything else in my life. But strangely, it was also the most valuable thing I've ever been given, because now I know precisely who belongs at my table. And I'd rather sit at a small, honest table than perform for a crowded one. If this story hit home for you, if it made you think about someone in your own life, stick around, because next week's story might just be the one that changes how you see your own 11 days.